What story inspires or motivates your involvement?
This is an extraordinary region that had so much natural abundance that the tribal economy was based on potlatching, giving away your wealth. So imagine a culture where a person's status in the community is based on how much they can give to their neighbors. What a lovely economic development system for this region, right? It's not about money, it's about community wealth. For me, it's not the end of our economic structure. It's how do we take what we have and turn it over to another generation in a way that makes them feel wealthy because they know each other. They know there's abundance. They know we're on the long-term sustainability. I think that's the real tipping point. And so when you begin to think, oh my God, we're all the same family, then why do some of us have all the water we need and some of us don't? And why do some of us have food and some of us don't? When I say Local 2020 is a place to have dialogue, those are the stories that I want to bring, and those are the stories I want to talk with other people about. How do we move from scarcity to abundance? How do we move from competition to potlatching? How do we move from individual locked houses to community wealth?
The thing about L2020 is everybody who's involved with it is curious about sustainability, so they already believe in sustainability. And they want to live with a light footprint on the land. So one, it's a set of people to have conversations with that already have the same belief structure. And it was like coming to a place where there is enough mass of people to have the conversations, to have the energy to start up different things like the community gardens. That's what's exciting. It's exciting to be in Port Townsend and East Jefferson County where that dialogue happens. It's exciting that, you know, that L2020 is a way for people to come together and have those dialogues. Doing that in a large city, Seattle or, you know, back in Boston or something, having that, even if it's the same number of people, you don't have a sense of enough mass because in the population of people, we were too small of a drop. And also got drained out to do other things because so many of the conversations weren't around that. Where here, a lot of the conversations are around that in a lot of venues that I'm in. So I find that exciting. I started in 1990. Somebody woke me up back there, and so then I moved out here. And so, you know, maybe people who come to even just one meeting get woken up in some way, and a few years down the road will realize that that's where they started making choices and acting differently in their own homes.
The story for me is the more you know, the more you try in a different way to incorporate more people, to just relax with, you know, what we have in front of us, what our challenges are, and instead of to ignore it, you know, to maybe take it on in a small way to try to make a difference. You know, and to really believe that, yes, collectively we all can make a difference. It's not so much theory, it's actually that they're doing things. It's just like the small things that the huge differences that they make, you know, and finding out how each person's story, you know, is changing things around.
I think I've been very inspired by kind of this emerging great story and the great turning that Joanna Macy and David Corton talk about, really going from these thousands of years of empire to some kind of sustainable or more resilient culture where people and the planet and all living systems are really respected and collaborated with. I mean, we've tried dominion and that hasn't worked. So the dominion story is definitely not inspiring. And so I think that idea that we're part of this evolutionary flow of life and that we have the power to kind of write our own story, that's inspiring to me.
Personally, the idea of peak oil, climate change, I react kind of the doom and gloom side of things. It affects me and makes me want to take action based on fear. But the more I interact with folks from Local 2020, I hear the other side of that, the opportunity for a major change, I find that very attractive and, a better alternative than to buy a rifle and head to the hills. And, so it gives me an opportunity for a positive outlet.
My commitment to sustainability predates my commitment to Local 2020. Back in the late 90s, Donella Meadows, the one that impacted me the most in her teachings about systems, she wrote a book called The Limits to Growth and Beyond the Limits to Growth. She was just using computer models and saying, with the increased population on the planet and the decrease in available resources, we're in bad shape here. And she predicted basically what we're aware of now. For many years, she was kind of like the Lone Ranger with this message of the need for conservation and retooling our paradigm. And once that you make that shift, you never go back. So it's not like my whole lifestyle has effectively shifted in alignment with that paradigm, because it's very challenging making those changes. But every year I make progress towards living more simply, closer to the earth, less material resource use, and conservation of water usage and that kind of thing.
I mean, the American story seems to be that individual enterprise and sort of selfish interests will serve the community. And it seems to me that the way that works out is us living that way serves the interests of a relatively small group of people who live well at the expense of everybody else, not just in this country, but in the world. So my story is that it's just as natural for us to come together and work together as it is for us to fight each other. And maybe those are characteristics that we share, the extreme individual and the extreme group. It makes sense to me that we help each other, not because it's the weak helping the weak, but because it's the human helping the human. Seems to me something like that.
The story is an evolution of consciousness, and that it's a long story. We tend to get confused because we view things from our lifespan. David Corton's Great Turning book was a very good summary of a bunch of things that I think are relevant, and that what's happening today and what's the crisis and dysfunction today is really no different than for thousands of years in a whole empire mentality. The power structure is designed to benefit a few people immensely, and everybody else in all life suffers. And it's predicated on a perception that we're separate, that we're absolutely separate. A century ago, there was a revolution in scientific thinking in physics. And the Newtonian model was billiard balls that were absolutely separate and only had relationship when they touched each other. And the quantum mechanic model is that everything is a resonant phenomenon. It's all interconnected all the time. And the hardware that's come from that physics is showing the unity of the world, whether it's the unity in loss of nuclear weapons or the unity in communication from, the internet. The challenge is to move from experiencing myself as an isolated individual to experiencing myself as a potent, intentional being in resonant context with all living, all matter, all people, all beings. How do I live my life today, in this moment, that's in harmony with that?
I think there's a real imbalance in our society, in our civilization. With the Industrial Revolution and the technological revolution, we've gained great control over material part of our nature. But we've overdone it. We're totally in balance. It's not that we want to go back to it, but we need to value creativity more than just productivity. We need to value leisure. We've become way overbalanced on consumption. And along with this is also power. Power has been very centralized. And I think on a local level is the best way to approach that. I think we need to work on national issues such as healthcare also. But where we can really empower people, where we can really make participatory democracy work is on the local level. And that's where you can reach people, and that's where you can make meaningful change.